pensioners called terrorists, veterans mocked. You won't believe what Labour ministers have been saying behind closed doors. Reporters have uncovered Labour's darkest secrets, and they go deeper than you think. The WhatsApp scandal that's rocking the party right now is revealing a whole different side of Keir Starmer's team, and let me tell you, it's not pretty. Remember Andrew Gwynne, the guy who was Labour's shadow health secretary? Well, he's not anymore. And when you hear what he's been saying in these leaked WhatsApp messages, you'll understand why. Did you know that over 95% of our viewers aren't subscribed to the channel? We totally get it, life gets busy, and sometimes it's easy to forget. But here's the thing, subscribing is completely free, and it really helps us keep creating the content you enjoy. So, why not hit that subscribe button and join our community? It only takes a second, but it makes a world of difference to us. Thank you for your support. This guy actually wished death upon an elderly constituent who had simply complained about bin collections. Yes, you heard that correctly, an MP, someone elected to serve the people, actually wished for the death of one of his constituents. But it doesn't stop there. Gwynne also made light of another constituent potentially being hit by a truck. I mean, who even does that? Is this really the kind of person we want representing us in Parliament? And Gwynne isn't the only one with a reckless mouth and even shakier morals. Oliver Ryan, another Labour MP, was right there in the chat. And what was Ryan's contribution to this disgraceful exchange? Mocking people for their sexuality. Real classy, right? Is this the progressive party that Labour claims to be? Now, Keir Starmer is desperately trying to distance himself from this scandal, hoping the public will just forget about it and move on. But let's be real, these aren't just some random party members or low-level staffers. These are the very people Starmer handpicked to represent Labour, to shape policy, and to be the public face of the party. So, the big question is this just the tip of the iceberg? Will more of these disgraceful messages surface? And more importantly, what does this reveal about the internal culture of the Labour Party? For years, Labour has been trying to shake off its reputation as the nasty party. They've been pushing the narrative that they stand for kindness, compassion, and defending the underprivileged. But these messages tell a completely different story. Labour's so-called transformation isn't just failing, it's rotting from the inside. This entire debacle brings to mind something my grandfather used to say, give a man enough rope, and he'll hang himself. Well, Labour has been given plenty of rope, and they seem to be doing an excellent job of tying themselves into knots. But here's what really infuriates me, these MPs aren't just insulting random people, they are ridiculing and wishing harm upon their own constituents, the very people who voted them into office, who placed their trust in them. This is betrayal in its worst form. And let's not forget, these messages weren't meant for public eyes, this is how Labour's big names talk when they think no one is watching. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else are they saying behind closed doors? What other toxic secrets are they keeping? Starmer has a serious problem on his hands. He's been trying to present Labour as a united, professional alternative to the Conservatives. But how can he claim to be the moral high ground when his own MPs have been caught red-handed being downright vile? Just when you thought Keir Starmer's troubles couldn't get any worse, he's managed to alienate yet another group of voters. And these aren't just any frustrated constituents, these are farmers. And they're furious. Yes, Starmer has managed to turn the countryside against him, all thanks to his proposed changes to inheritance tax for farmers. This isn't just about money, it's about their entire way of life. When a farmer passes away, they typically want to pass their farm down to their children. But under Starmer's plan, those children may be forced to sell off parts of the farm just to cover the tax bill. Hardly in line with Labour's "for the working people" message, is it? And let me tell you, these farmers aren't taking it lying down. They've come out in force, making it abundantly clear to Starmer and his team exactly what they think of his bright idea. We're talking tractors blocking roads in London, bringing the heart of the city to a standstill. It sounds like something out of a bizarre political satire, except it's actually happening. And it gets even better, Starmer was forced to cancel a visit to a housing development in Buckinghamshire because of the protests. Yes, the leader of the Labour Party, running scared from a group of farmers on tractors. And how is he handling all of this? By trying to reframe it as some noble economic necessity. He had the audacity to stand there and claim, you can't have interest rates coming down, the economic growth we need, and waiting lists decreasing while maintaining the tax break for farmers. Oh, come on, Keir. Are you seriously trying to pit farmers against the rest of the country? As if they're not part of the economy. As if their livelihoods don't matter. It's as if he's living in some alternate reality where he can just throw an entire industry under the bus and expect applause. And here's the kicker, according to NFU President Tom Bradshaw, this tax change won't even make much of a difference. He's saying that the revenue raised from this would be anywhere between £0 and £5.5 million, not enough to significantly impact the future of the NHS or UK schools. So Starmer is willing to alienate an entire sector of the economy for what? A negligible amount that won't even fix the problems he claims it will. It's as if Starmer is playing some twisted game of political chicken, betting that he can afford to lose the rural vote. Does he think farmers don't matter? Has he forgotten that food doesn't just magically appear in supermarkets? But here's the thing, farmers have long memories. They won't just shrug their shoulders and move on. They'll remember who stood by them and who threw them under the bus. And right now, Starmer's name is mud in rural communities. This entire debacle reveals a deeper issue with Starmer's leadership, his willingness to sacrifice one group to appease another. He's not afraid to divide the country against itself. Is this really the kind of leader we want? Someone who prioritizes quick political wins over real solutions. And if you thought Starmer's farmer fiasco was bad, just wait until you hear about the revolt of the rich. Yes, confidence in labor among high net worth individuals has collapsed, and some of them are even considering leaving the country. Why? Because of Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves' economic policies. Labor was once the party of the working class, but Starmer seems to have missed that memo. He's managed to alienate even Labor's wealthy supporters to the point that they're contemplating packing up and leaving. Talk about a self-inflicted wound. Let's break it down. A new survey has revealed a shocking drop in confidence among Labor's affluent voters, from a massive 84% down to just 48%. That's not just a dip, that's Labor's ship springing leaks left and right. Mike Stimson, a partner at Suze, summed it up perfectly. The extent to which the confidence of high net worth individuals has collapsed demonstrates a missed opportunity for the new government, which had high levels of support when it came to power. Ouch. So, what's scaring off these wealthy supporters? Well, Reeves has been busy pushing economic policies that are about as popular as a skunk at a garden party. She's talking about increasing employer national insurance contributions and slapping a 20% VAT on private school fees. Labor's wealthy backers thought they were supporting a party committed to economic growth. Instead, they're getting higher taxes and rising costs. And here's the most shocking part, 1 in 10 of these wealthy supporters is seriously considering leaving the UK. They're so disillusioned with Labor's plans that they're ready to take their money elsewhere. These aren't just any rich people, we're talking about long-time Labor donors. If they jump ship, Labor's financial stability could be in real jeopardy. So, how is Starmer handling this crisis? Well, in true political fashion, he's backtracking faster than a crab scuttling away from danger. Remember all that tough talk about cracking down on non-dom tax status? Yeah, that's suddenly disappeared. Rachel Reeves is now trying to smooth things over, telling the Wall Street Journal, "We have been listening to the concerns raised by the non-dom community." Oh, really, Rachel? Funny how those concerns became urgent when the money started walking away. But here's the real issue, this entire disaster reveals a fundamental flaw in Starmer's leadership. He's proving that he's willing to sacrifice one group to appease another, dividing the country in the process. Labor's ship isn't just taking on water, it's heading straight for an iceberg. And Starmer is at the helm, desperately trying to change course while more and more people jump overboard. This case has got everyone talking. It's about a UK resident who has been allowed to bring 6 relatives from Gaza to the UK. And get this, they haven't even seen each other in person for 17 years. This ruling is based on a new interpretation of Article 8, which covers the right to family and private life. But let's be real, after 17 years apart, is that really family? At best, it's the kind of relationship you maintain on Facebook. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer, the former human rights lawyer, is just sitting there, twiddling his thumbs, refusing to even commit to appealing the decision. What happened to standing up for Britain, Keir? This is a big deal. A judge has essentially created an entirely new immigration policy on the fly. Isn't that Parliament's job? You know, the people we actually elected to make these decisions. And let's talk about the implications of this ruling. This could set a precedent where anyone from a conflict zone with distant relatives in the UK could claim the right to move here. Even Egypt and Jordan, which are much closer to Gaza, aren't taking in Gazans. But the UK? Apparently, the door is wide open. Experts are warning that this could trigger mass immigration from war-torn regions. And guess who's going to foot the bill for all of this? That's right, us, the taxpayers. Our public services are already under immense strain, and now we're expected to roll out the red carpet for anyone who can claim a distant connection to a UK resident. But here's the real kicker: Starmer is more concerned with keeping his legal buddies happy than protecting British interests. His ally, Lord Hermer, seems to have more influence over him than the national interest does. Whatever happened to Labour's stance on controlled immigration? Those days are clearly long gone. Critics have slammed the ECHR ruling as absurd and farcical, and they're absolutely right. The UK needs serious reform of its human rights laws to prevent judges from unilaterally reshaping immigration policy. But is Starmer leading the charge for such reforms? Of course not. He's too busy keeping his human rights lawyer friends happy. The irony here is striking: Starmer's legal background was once his biggest selling point. Now, it's becoming a liability. He's caught between his past commitments and his current political ambitions, and he's failing at both. This entire situation is exposing a critical flaw in Starmer's leadership: his willingness to sacrifice the country's best interests to appease a small group of his associates. Is this really the kind of leader Britain needs? Someone who's prepared to throw the nation's immigration policy under the bus for political convenience? But the problems don't stop there. Labour is now cozying up to China, abandoning its long-preached values of human rights and British sovereignty in favour of economic deals. After all their grandstanding about moral leadership, they're now rubbing shoulders with the very regime they've spent years criticizing. Labour officials, including Foreign Secretary David Lammy, recently held discussions with China's Foreign Minister, Wang Yi. They described the talks as robust and constructive, but let's be honest, it's more like, let's pretend we care about human rights while we negotiate trade deals. And guess who made an appearance? None other than Keir Starmer himself, eager to discuss economic growth with China. But here's the problem: many of his own Labour MPs are furious about this. They're warning Starmer and Lammy not to sell out British interests just to secure a few lucrative deals. And this is where it gets even more concerning: there's talk of a new Chinese embassy being built right near the Tower of London. Imagine that, a potential Chinese intelligence hub right next to one of Britain's most iconic landmarks. Who needs tourist attractions when you can have a front-row seat to Britain's national secrets? And then there's the North Sea wind farm project. China might get involved in that too. Yes, you read that right. A Beijing-based company could soon have a stake in Britain's energy infrastructure. The Ministry of Defence is already raising alarm bells, but apparently, national security takes a backseat when there's money to be made. Some Labour MPs are trying to push back against this. One MP stated, "We need a transparent and pragmatic relationship with China, willing to trade, but putting Britain first and refusing to tolerate human rights abuses or violations of international law." That sounds good in theory, but Starmer's actions suggest otherwise. His leadership is increasingly resembling a China first, Britain second approach. Another Labour MP pointed out something even more alarming: China is intimidating Hong Kongers right here in Britain. The UK is allowing Chinese authorities to harass people on British soil, and yet Labour seems more concerned with maintaining good trade relations than standing up for the victims of Beijing's oppression. This MP also stressed the need for Labour to reaffirm its commitment to Taiwan, but with the way things are going, don't expect Starmer to make any bold statements anytime soon. And it's not just Labour MPs raising the alarm. Campaigners and senior Tories are also calling out Labour's leadership for trying to normalise relations with China despite its blatant human rights violations. They're particularly pointing to the ongoing persecution of Uyghur Muslims. But Starmer and his team seem far more interested in securing business deals than taking a stand for human rights. It's almost as if Starmer has completely forgotten about all the impassioned speeches he used to give about human rights when he was a lawyer. Now that he's in power, it's all about economics. It's as if he's traded in his moral compass for a calculator. This is the same Labour Party that has spent years trying to shed its reputation as the nasty party. But forming close ties with a regime known for human rights abuses isn't exactly going to help with that image, is it? And if all of that wasn't bad enough, Starmer's leadership failures don't stop with China. his shadow chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is now under fire as well. After the diplomatic disaster with China, you'd think Starmer would try to show some strength, but no, he's clinging to Reeves like a sinking ship. And let's talk about that ship, it's barely moving. The UK economy grew by just 0.1% between October and December. That's barely above stagnation. And who's in charge of steering this economic tugboat? None other than Rachel Reeves. With figures like these, you'd think Starmer would consider replacing her, but instead, he's standing by her side. And it's not because she's doing a stellar job. Reeves' budget is being slammed from all sides, critics say it's stifling growth. And these aren't just random commentators, we're talking about senior political figures calling her out. Shadow Chancellor Murray didn't hold back, saying, working people and businesses are already paying for Reeves' choices. Ouch. Remember that £10 billion in fiscal headroom Reeves was boasting about? Well, it's evaporating fast. The Office for Budget Responsibility is expected to downgrade growth forecasts in the upcoming spring statement. That means Reeves might soon have to either start making deep cuts or, worse, consider tax hikes to stay within her fiscal rules. So why isn't Starmer showing Reeves the door? According to former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, it's because Starmer lacks the courage to make tough calls. And that's becoming increasingly clear with every blunder his administration makes. The pattern is undeniable, whether it's immigration, foreign policy, or economic strategy. Starmer is proving time and time again that he's willing to sacrifice principles for short-term gains. Labour under his leadership is rudderless, lurching from one crisis to the next, desperately trying to patch up the leaks as more voters jump ship. According to Kwarteng, the real reason Starmer is refusing to sack Reeves is simple: he's scared. He knows that if Reeves goes, he could be next on the chopping block. It's like a game of political dominoes: knock one over, and the whole structure might come crashing down. But here's the kicker: even if Starmer did somehow find the courage to push Reeves out, it likely wouldn't make any difference. Kwarteng pointed out that no other Labour MP would introduce significantly different economic policies. It's as if the entire party is reading from the same outdated economics textbook, blindly following a strategy that clearly isn't working. So, what does this mean? Starmer is trapped between a rock and a hard place. He's got a chancellor who's about as effective at growing the economy as I am at growing hair on my bald spot. But he can't afford to fire her because he's too worried about his own political survival. Talk about putting personal ambition ahead of the country's needs. And let's not forget, this is the same Labour Party that has been desperately trying to shake off the nasty party reputation. Well, keeping a chancellor who's presiding over an economy that's flatlining faster than a patient in cardiac arrest isn't exactly going to help with that image, is it? In the end, Starmer's refusal to remove Reeves is like watching a captain go down with his ship, except in this case, the captain is clinging to the anchor. It's a stark reminder that in politics, sometimes loyalty trumps competence, even when the nation's economy is on the line. Well, folks, Keir Starmer's Labour Party is falling apart like a house of cards. The farmers' tractor protests are just the latest sign of a growing sense of betrayal among traditional Labour supporters. Starmer has been caught misleading the public about inheritance tax changes, causing outrage across the country. But this leadership crisis isn't just about one issue, it's a perfect storm of scandals, from WhatsApp controversies to economic failures. Starmer's tenure is like watching a car crash in slow motion. And who's going to end up paying the price for Labour's incompetence? The British people. What do you all think about this situation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more updates on the issues that truly matter for Britain's future. Together, we can make a difference.